All right. Bruce, can you hear me?
Yes, we're all good, Jared. I think we're all set.
Well, I'm here with Bruce Brunk, our team lead. My name is Jared Burke. We're part of the Citrus County Dream Team here in Lecanto, Florida. And we want to just take a couple quick minutes to talk with you a little bit about what some of the things we're talking about here in our virtual office.
Yeah. Well, and Jared, this is kind of neat. We're just experimenting with this virtual office. Our team's been doing this, I guess, the last 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. We have been just faces and squares for a few weeks now.
And I think one of the goals today is to let buyers and sellers know that real estate's happening, and and this is some of the new technology that's making it possible.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. We're very thankful to have the way to communicate still and do business, and we are grateful for that. So,
well, Jared, what are you hearing? I'm just curious. What are you hearing people ask that we want to talk about today that would really help somebody that you're hearing from the marketplace?
Well, I work here in the office, so I do get some calls, and I've been talking with people, some of our customers and everything. And I made a list of kind of questions for you, Bruce. They all kind of hinge around like what should we be thinking about the real estate market right now? Is this a good time to buy? If I'm interested in buying, if I'm already under contract, is this a good time to stick through it? Is this a good time to sell, or should we be sitting on the sidelines? So generally, just when we're in kind of uncertain times like this, it can be a little bit difficult to kind of plan and make decisions. And we were talking in one of our meetings that we're not in a time now where we can plan super far ahead. We have to kind of plan for the next thing and the next thing. So so that's kind of what basically I would classify people into these categories. I wrote them down. It's buyers who need to buy right now.
Okay, someone who has to buy it, something's happening, they need a house right away. Gotcha.
Yeah. Sellers who need to sell right now, and how do they go about that?
Sure. So someone who just got a divorce, or someone who's got an estate situation. We've had both.
Or they were already in process, or this isn't. You still got to live your life, even though you got stuff going on.
Yeah.
Then there's another group of people, like a lot of buyers, looking at this as an opportunity to get a deal.
I've seen some of those offers come across my desk.
There's a perceived notion that prices are dropping, and maybe you could speak to that.
Sure.
Sellers and buyers who are just kind of sitting on the sidelines, kind of saying, what, I'm going to take a wait and see approach to it.
Sure.
Maybe they're planning to do something in a month or two, and want to know how to be kind of proactive about that right now while they're waiting. So that would be the general question. So I'll let you speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I don't know how it was for you, Jared, but I as we saw what was developing, I kind of expected or thought we may see real estate just freeze for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, wasn't sure how long. And I've been surprised for myself anyway, that really hasn't happened. And I know you're involved in the transaction world, and I mean, are we still closing deals and getting?
Not that I was looking for a vacation, but it has not been a vacation.
No vacation.
Which I'm thankful. I'm very thankful for.
Well, just on that note, there were two real quick things I wanted to show folks, and that is, I'm going to share my screen with you just for a second, Jared, because I think sometimes a graph or a number can answer the question real quickly.
Sure.
Down here in my bottom left, I've got this is the Citrus County MLS, and this is the last 7 days. So in the last residential last 7 days, right here at the bottom, there have been 70 new listings, 87 went pending, 112 closed. And of course, there's some other numbers, but all those numbers tell me that there's still activity happening. And to be honest with you, that's not a whole lot different than what we would have seen back in March or February. So the first surprise for me was business is still happening. And it's probably what you attributed, Jared, and that is, some people have to sell. It's a state, it's a situation where they're moving, or the house is already in a contract, or whatever it is. So they have to move. And then you've got buyers that, we've got one right now, their house is closing in Connecticut, so they don't want to be homeless. So you've got situations on both sides. So on that issue, you've got things happening in the market right now that lets people know it's still happening. And this other here at the bottom, I've got just some of our own numbers, February, March, April. There's there's definitely an upward trend, which is typical for this time of year, saying that, business is building and so on. So I think the first aha for me was, we haven't stopped. We're still in business, and we're changing, like we've already talked about here, with some different approaches to
Right.
Yeah.
So for those people who they're in that situation, what kinds of things what advice would you give them, or what are some of the new ways that we're doing real estate now?
Yeah.
If you can speak to that a little bit about how a buyer actually goes and views a home, or
Yeah,
a seller has somebody come in.
Yeah, there are some changes. And first of all, the Realtor Association is recommending that we follow CDC guidelines. So what that looks like, if you're a buyer, you'll probably be asked 4 questions. Have you had the virus? Have you been around someone that has? Have you traveled overseas? Or have you come from an area that's been highly affected by the virus? So the goal there, of course, is to protect buyers, agents, and sellers from spread of the disease. So that would be one change. Another change is, we recommend, I usually, when I'm showing a house, I'll wear gloves. If it happened to be a highly trafficked area, perhaps a mask. Kind of depends on who we're with. But with the gloves, we'll turn on the lights, we'll open the doors. A buyer can just walk through and look at everything. If they want a cabinet open, we'll be happy to open it. So they don't actually have to touch anything. They don't really have to engage, in anything that would cause them to get sick. If they choose to wear a mask, that's not a problem. That would be fine. On the seller side, same thing. We're protecting sellers from folks coming in that, wouldn't be appropriate to come in.
Right.
And sellers, once we leave, if they want to air it out, that's up to them. But there's a fair amount of protection, I think, for folks. So a few changes from what would be typical, but basically the mechanics are very similar.
Now you've done a couple virtual tours as well, right?
Yeah, virtual. This is kind of neat. Kind of what we're doing now. We were doing some role playing in practice this morning. There's some great ways to use this for folks to view homes together with an agent, with a specialist, and that way the buyer can give the agent an idea of what they like, what they don't like as they go through the pictures together. The goal of that would be, instead of going to view 10 houses together or 5 houses together, to come down to maybe the 1, 2, or at most 3 houses that really match the criteria of what the buyer needs. And that'll protect the buyers, it'll protect sellers, protect the agent, and basically it'll save time in the same process.
So I save some gas money.
Yeah, save gas money. It's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah.
So we really, as a team, as you know, are really leaning into and embracing technology, because I think it's the best thing for buyers and for sellers to have this kind of resource available to help them in their process. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so that's been one of my favorite. I mean, not to say that you just try to find the silver lining and
Sure.
challenge,
Yeah.
And just how we've been able to kind of get around and navigate some of this. It's been interesting. It's been neat to see, how we leverage the technology to be able to do that. So, now, as far as people who are kind of sitting tight right now, waiting to see, taking a wait and see approach,
Sure.
are there ways that they can be proactive, so they don't feel like they're just, twiddling their thumbs until things like me, I have to be going and doing. Sitting still is not my favorite thing. So if I feel like I can at least be doing something to be moving the ball forward, that helps me in times like this. So how would what would your advice be to people like that?
Yeah, no, great question, Jared. And but basically there's 2 tracks on that. For sellers, what I'm seeing that I think is very helpful, sellers are using this little extra time. If they're in a wait and see mode, maybe they're not quite comfortable with people coming in, or maybe they aren't quite ready to list. They're using this extra time to get the house 100% ready. So, typically when we list a home, a lot of us, the home is like 95% ready. We still haven't quite repainted the entryway, or there's just little things we haven't done yet. So sellers that can take this time and get that first impression set, where the people walk in and get the aha moment of, wow, this house is really well taken care of. I think that's a great use of time for a seller, just to get everything ready for that initial impression. Yeah. For buyers,
I think my wife would like to hear you say that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first impression is a big one, so I think it's time well spent.
Honey-do list is getting bigger.
Yeah. Well, and like curb appeal, I mean, this is a good time. Working outside is a safe thing to do. So remulching the flower bed, or just, little things that you would probably eventually get around to doing. It's a great time to do it, make that first and fresh curb appeal. For buyers, same thing. There's some things to do ahead of time. For example, working with lenders, with loan officers, getting that pre-approval letter. If there's anything on the credit that needs addressed, this extra time is the perfect time to get all that done. And along with that, I'd say one of the best things is working with an agent, a buyer specialist, and getting set up on a listing card, a portal. We have at Keller Williams, we have an app for each of our buyers that works anywhere in the United States. Some of those tools, getting those in place, and doing some of these virtual showings that we've talked about, where a buyer can sit with the agent, they can go through the pictures, they can help the agent understand what they like or don't like about that particular home, which ultimately will help the agent find the best fit. Cool. So I think it can be timed really well.
There's a lot somebody can be doing right now that, we're already on our computer. The app is really fun to play with.
Yeah.
I've been going through and making my favorite lists for whenever we're ready to buy.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. No, it's funny because Keller Williams actually, probably not intentionally, but they spent over $1 billion in the last 2 or 3 years on technology, not knowing, of course, that this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But we're very well positioned to move into this area with technology.
Good. Yeah. Well, those were the questions I had for you today, just for us to talk about a little bit. Did you have anything else that was on your mind?
One thing I thought of, Jared, as we're talking, and this is something a buyer specialist can help a buyer with, and that is about 95% of the Florida contracts right now are being done on an as-is FAR bar contract. And part of that contract is there's an inspection period. Default's about 15 days is the default. And what that can do for someone is you can do these virtual showings if you're not local, and then you can actually put a house under contract, and during that inspection period, come down and actually visit and look at it. So buyer specialists can kind of help you with that process, but there's some ways to use that in this situation so that you're not looking at a whole bunch of houses, and when you go to look at a house, that you actually have it under contract, so you're not
wasting. If you found something that you were really, really thought was the right one.
Right.
And you wanted to make sure you had the best shot at it. Okay.
Yeah, in other words, travel is a little bit restricted right now. So if you're in Connecticut, you don't want to drive down to Florida and go through all the hassle to get here, only to find out the house you like is now under contract with somebody else. So one of the specialists on our team can help you set that up in such a way that you have the house under contract, you come down as part of the inspection period, and hopefully decide that that's the right house. Again, 90% of the time, you'll say, oh, this is great, I'm excited. 10% of the time, maybe there were some things you weren't aware of, and you decide, hey, I do want to not buy this house and do something else.
Yeah. So. Okay, that's good input. Yeah, as far as that 10-day inspection period in the contract. So very good. Well, I think that's all I had for today. We can wrap it up here. If anybody wants to reach out to us with any questions of anything we talked about, Bruce, I was going to recommend if anybody had input on some of the things that we talked about. We're going to be posting this on Facebook, on YouTube, on our page. And then if you want to reach us by phone, you can reach us at 352-637-2777. Our email address is info@citrussold.com. And then obviously citrussold.com is our website. So, but we'll post all that here on the pages that we, in the links below the video and everything. So, all right, Bruce, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again maybe next week.
Sounds good. Sounds great, Jared.
All right, very good. Well, you have a good one. I'll see you later.
Thanks. You bet.